The shiny red pickup truck turned into the driveway, kicking up dust, and I was out behind the barn with a shovel, digging out feed sacks the rats had chewed through. Before the dust even settled, my oldest boy, Kenny, jumped out of the driver's seat, slapped the hood, and looked at that truck like it was a prize stallion. "Dad, take a look at this beauty. V8 turbo, panoramic sunroof, heated leather seats. Brand new model, first one in town to get it." He walked around the truck, his boots landing right on my vegetable rows, crushing 2 lines of lettuce seedlings into the mud. I didn't say anything. I bent down and pushed the little plants back up. "Kenny, you tore up the driveway. I just put down new gravel last month." He laughed. I recognized that laugh. I heard it when he was 12 and wanted money for a video game. I heard it when he was 18 and stole my old truck to go joyriding in town. I heard it when he was 25 and brought his wife home to announce they were splitting up the South Slope land his mother left me. "Dad, gravel costs nothing. You know what this truck cost? $68,000. Cash." He spun the keys around his finger, the metal clinking sharp and loud in the quiet evening. I leaned on my shovel and stood up straight. 62 years old, and my back hadn't been right since I was 40, from all those years welding on oil pipelines. But that day I made myself stand tall. "Where did you get 68,000? Sold the 20 acres on the South Slope." The wind came from the barn, ryeing hay and old motor oil. I had been smelling that smell for over 40 years, ever since I took over this farm from my father. Those 20 acres on the South Slope were my mother's dowry, rich soil with good drainage. Corn yielded 30% more than the North Field. Kenny knew what that land meant to me. Of course he did. "What did you get for it?" "31,000 an acre. Enough for the truck, and I can set Jenny up with a beauty shop in town." I didn't answer. He pulled the door open and closed it again, talking nonstop about 0 to 60, the sound system, the tire grip. I watched his Adam's apple bob up and down as he talked, and I saw his mother's face in his, especially that little crease at the corner of his eye when he smiled. "Dad, don't re at me like that. Land is dead. This truck is alive. You've been stuck on this broken down place your whole life. And what do you have to show for it? The barn is about to collapse. Your roof has been leaking for 3 years, and you patch it with plastic. You don't even have a decent shed. When I was a kid, you used to brag that there was oil under this place. Where is it?" He patted the hood, and it gave a dull thump. "I'm moving 4-way road." That's what people do. I gripped the wooden handle of my shovel. My knuckles went white, but I didn't lose my temper. I just said, "You go tell your sister that before she sells the 40 acres on the North Slope, she better talk to me first." Kenny's smile froze for a second. "Amy can make her own decisions, Dad. She's ma ride. She's ma ride, but she's still my daughter. You two have been scheming to erve up my land behind my back, and you think I don't know." He shrugged and pulled open the driver's door. "Dad, times have changed. Your old ways don't work anymore. This Saturday Amy is bringing a buyer to see the North Slope, and you better not pull out that shotgun again like last time." The guy almost called the cops. The red truck spun around and kicked up a spray of gravel that hit the old barn boa RDS like buckshot. I stood there, watching the taillights disappear into the dust, getting smaller and smaller until they turned onto the highway and vanished. I didn't eat dinner that night. I sat in the old rocking chair in the kitchen, my feet on the hand-woven rug my mother left behind, and on the wall hung my father's old map. The bound a rise of our land were marked in red pencil. NEARLY 200 acres, pieced together generation by generation, like a puzzle that never got finished. I lit the oil lamp, took the map down, and spread it across the table. The 20 acres on the South Slope had already been crossed out in pencil. The 40 on the North Slope were still outlined in red. I reached into the bottom drawer and pulled out my bank book. Balance, $1,427 and 36 cents. My pension came every month, enough for utilities, feed, seed, fertilizer, and 1 tractor repair. But not enough to match Kenny's truck, not enough to match anything new in this town. 3 years ago, I took a county hydrology survey report to the bank and told them there might be oil and gas signs under my land. That young manager didn't even finish reading it before he pushed it back across the counter. "Mister, I get 20 of these a month. Unless you pay for a professional crew to drill and test, we don't gamble on this kind of thing." The professional crew cost $120,000. I had been saving my whole life and never got close that I folded the map and blew out the lamp. The old clock in the BARN struck 9, and I heard the wind moving through the holes in the BARN roof, like something sighing. I told myself it didn't matter. The land was gone, and I wouldn't be FA remaining much longer anyway. Kenny was right. Times had changed, but I couldn't sleep. Thursday morning, before the fog lifted, I heard vehicles outside. Not the sound of Kenny's pickup, but something heavier, steadier, like a big truck engine. I threw on my jacket and walked out to find two white SUVs parked at the end of the driveway, with State Geological Survey decals on the doors. A middle-aged woman got out, wearing muddy work boots and riding a tablet. She walked toward me, and on her way she reached down and straightened a fence post that was about to fall over. Edwin H.A. Repair, that's me. I'm M.A. Klein from the State Geological Survey. We reanalyzed the surface hydrocarbon gas anomaly report you submitted 3 years ago, combined with new satellite stratigraphic data. We want to confirm the subsurface structure 30 meters below your BARN. We suspect there's a closed anticline formation down there. She talked fast, throwing out technical terms. I didn't catch all of it, but I heard below the BARN and anticline formation. My father used to call that spot the pothole, because rainwater always pooled there in summer. The BARN foundation stayed damp, and 2 of the main beams had rotted through. I led them into the BARN. The old BOA RDS groaned under our feet, and dust swirled in the shafts of light coming through the holes in the roof. M.A. knelt down and tapped the ground with a tool, while her assistant set up a device outside that looked like a radar, humming for over an hour. Before they left, M.A. took off her HRD hat. Her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. She looked at me and said, "Mr. H.A. Repair, we need to do a core drilling sample. It will take about a week. The survey will cover the cost since this involves regional geological data updates. But we need your written permission." I signed the form. My hand was shaking a little. As she walked away, she glanced back at the old half-collapsed BARN, and there was something in her eyes, like she was looking at an unopened safe. Friday afternoon, Kenny called the landline. "Dad, I heard some geology people came to the place." "What's going on?" "Just checking data." "What data? You're not telling people there's oil under us again." "You, Dad. Don't let those people mess up the land. The buyer won't like it. Amy is bringing someone to see the North Slope tomorrow. And you?" I hung up that the drilling rig pulled in Monday morning. A flatbed trailer, followed by M.A. Ridha's white SUV. This time she had 3 people with her and 2 pieces of equipment, plus a man who looked like he was in charge, wearing a state energy department badge. He got out, walked around the BARN, crouched down to look at the crack in the foundation wall, rubbed some of the black wet dirt that was seeping through the crack between his fingers, and brought it to his nose. He didn't say anything, but his face changed. They worked quietly. The drill was wrapped in soundproofing and only made a low hum, no louder than the air compressor at the auto repair shop on the east end of town. I watched them from the kitchen window, the sand and topsoil being cut through, the mud being pumped out, and their sample tubes going down section by section into the EARTH. At lunchtime, M.A. Ridha knocked on my door. She had a sandwich in her hand and asked if I wanted to eat with her. I poured her some iced tea, and she leaned against the doorframe and said, "Mr. H.A. Repair, what did your father grow on this land?" "Corn and alfalfa. My grandfather kept a few head of cattle." "Did you ever notice that the grass grows faster around the BARN in summer, or that the snow melts earlier there in winter?" I thought about it. She was right. The shady side of the BARN always lost its snow first, and the grass was always greener there than on the north slope. My father used to say the ground had good energy, which was why he chose that spot to build the BARN. I thought he was just superstitious. M.A. Ridha took a bite of her sandwich and didn't say anything more. At 4 in the afternoon, the drill stopped. The man in charge came out of the BARN holding a sample tube. The core inside was black and glossy, shimmering with an oily sheen in the afternoon sun. He stood in front of me, his Adam's apple bobbing just like Kenny's had that date. "Mr. H.A. Repair," he said, "preliminary results. Between 33 and 41 meters down, we have high-quality oil BA ring sandstone. Good porosity, fluid saturation exceeding our expectations. Our estimate of recoverable reserves for this closed structure is at least 1.2 million BA rels. 1.2 million BA rels. I turned that number over in my head. Then I thought about the gas station price sign I saw last year, over $80 a BA rel. I tried to do the math and couldn't keep up. You're telling me there's oil under my land? Better than that, he said. Light sweet crude. Low refining cost, high market price. And this structure is fully sealed, no fracking needed. A straight vertical well will produce. For this land, at current prices, conservative estimate, we're looking at $200 to $300 million RS in reserves. He looked at me, probably expecting me to faint or drop my glass. But I just nodded and finished my iced tea, with a few bits of lemon pulp at the bottom. I said, "Can we tea or down that BARN? It's in the way of the rig." Mayra smiled. News travels faster than oil wells. The next morning, before I was even out of bed, 3 CARS were parked at my gate. The first was Kenny's red pickup. The second was Amy and her husband's Honda SUV. The third I didn't recognize, and a man in a suit got out riding a briefcase, his hair slicked back perfectly. Kenny didn't slap the hood this time. He stood on the porch with mud on his boots, and his face bright red. "Dad, I heard they found oil under your land. Is it true?" Amy came running over from the Honda, her husband following slowly behind. She was 34 now, and since she got my ride, she didn't come home much. When she did, it was either to ask for money or to talk me into selling land. She grabbed my ARM and said, "Dad, don't let outsiders talk you into anything. This kind of drilling takes a real company. My husband knows a lawyer in Houston who specializes in mineral rights." "Your husband knows a lawyer in Houston. So why didn't your husband introduce you to the buyer for the North Slope?" I pulled my ARM free. "Both of you slow down. I haven't signed anything with anybody." The man in the suit stepped forward and handed me a business CA road vice president of some energy investment firm out of Texas. His voice was steady and unhurried. "Mr. H.A. Ripper, our firm is prepared to offer $40 million RS for a full buyout of your surface and mineral rights. Sign the papers and you're a cash millionaire. No waiting for drilling, no production royalties, no risk. Clean and simple." I took the CARD, looked at it, and set it down on the porch railing. "40 million, yes, sir. Cash. Funds in your account within a week." Kenny shouted from beside me, "Dad, 40 million. Do you know how many trucks 40 million buys?" His wife, Jenny, shoved him. I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the red pickup, parked at the edge of the driveway with a little dust on the hood. Next to the row of news vans that had just arrived from the county TV station, it suddenly didn't look so bright anymore. By the afternoon, the county land office showed up, the state energy office showed up, and Mayra and her team showed up. Everybody crowded into my leaky living room. There weren't enough chairs, so some stood, some squatted, and one sat in my mother's rocking chair. The rocker creaked and groaned like it was about to fall. Mayra spread the preliminary survey report across the dinner table and pointed at RTS I couldn't read. Under state law, mineral rights belong to the surface owner. Mr. H.A. Ripper has full development rights. But commercial development requires environmental assessment and a community hearing. Also, pipeline transport needs easement permissions from neighboring landowners. Amy cut in. "So we have to find our own drilling company, correct? Or assign the mineral rights? Or negotiate a production royalty split with an operator?" The standard RD range for landowners in this region is 12 to 18% of gross production value. At this reserve size, a single well's daily production is enough to buy a house in town. The room went quiet for a second. Then Kenny stood up. "Dad, you can't handle this alone. You need me to help you. I know people. I have connections in town. I can get you a good deal." I looked at him. He was wearing his new denim jacket with the keychain from his red pickup still clipped to the collar. "How much would you charge me for that help?" He blinked. "Dad, I'm your son. You sold the South Slope, and you didn't think about being my son. You and your sister plotted to split up my land, and you didn't think about being my son. Now that there's oil under the dirt, you're my son again." Kenny's face went from red to pale. Amy st route to say something, but her husband held her back. The suit from Texas hadn't left. He was waiting on the porch, and he came back with a new offer. 10% royalty and a $5 million signing bonus. He called it industry standard road. I walked to the door and looked at the red pickup. Then I turned and looked at the BARN. Generations of soil. The north slope my father bought with his corn money. The south slope my grandfather traded a mule for. All of it now transformed by a survey report into black gold. But I remembered that night I was crouched in the BARN with a flashlight, watching the rotted beams, rats running past my feet, spending 3 hours fixing a fence and cutting my finger on the wire, blood dripping into the dirt. That dirt was dry and hard, just like the decades of Linya RS on this place. The second week, I put a copy of the survey report in the safe deposit box at the town bank. The branch manager opened the door for me himself, and his hands didn't shake when he poured my coffee, but I noticed he was a lot friendlier than he had been 3 years earlier. He asked if I wanted to open a corporate account to manage my potential mineral income. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Then the drilling crew came in. Not the light rig from the state survey, but a full commercial operation. 3 flatbed trailers, a real drilling tower, and a dozen workers who set up temporary trailers on the east side of the BARN. The generator ran from dawn till the RK, and the smell of diesel hung over the YRD all day. I signed a royalty contract, not a buyout. M.A. Ritha found me a mineral rights lawyer, old Tom, who had been practicing out of a small office next to the county courthouse for 30 years, with faded law degrees hanging on his wall. He went through every clause of the contract with me, and he made that Houston suit pound the table twice. We ended up with 15% of gross production value, with the operator covering all drilling and operating costs. Tom said that was a good deal for a small Midwestern field. The day they drilled the first production well, Kenny showed up again. This time he wasn't in his red pickup. He came in his wife's old sedan, because the payments on his new truck had been stopped. Amy and her husband were with him. The 3 of them stood in a row at the end of the driveway like they were attending some kind of ceremony. I stood next to the drilling tower in my HRD hat, mud all over my boots. The drilling foreman yelled spin up, and the machinery ROA read to life, the ground vibrating beneath my feet, the tremor traveling up through my palms to my shoulders. Kenny tried to come closer, but the foreman stopped him at the fence. He shouted from behind the BA Ryer, "Dad, let me in there so we can talk." I didn't turn around. The drill pipe went down section by section, the mud circulation system kicked in, and green drilling mud overflowed from the wellhead. The crew was too busy to pay attention to him. By the afternoon, Kenny was still there. He leaned against the fence, sweating in the sun, until finally he caught me walking over to get a drink of water. He grabbed the chain link and said, "Dad, Jenny is divorcing me." I unscrewed my water bottle and took a sip. She says I wasted all the South Slope money and I still owe on the truck. She says I'm a loser who can't even hold on to his own father's land. She's not wrong. Kenny gripped the fence until his knuckles went white. "Dad, I know I messed up. I shouldn't have sold those 20 acres. Now that you have money, can we buy that land back? I heard you're putting in 5 wells on the north slope and the south. We're not drilling the south slope. That land's geology isn't right. Then buy it back for me to FARM. I'll behave from now on. No more flashy stuff, just honest work." I looked at him. His eyes were just like his mother's, big and round and quick to get red, like TRS were always right there waiting. But those same eyes were the ones that GLA read at me when he was 25 and yelled, "What good comes from FARMing?" I said, "That land got bought by somebody who built a Wari house on it. Did you read the resale restriction clause when you signed the papers?" He let go of the fence and stepped back. "What restriction clause?" "The buyer can only use it for storage facilities and can't resell for 10 years. You signed it. You didn't read it." He stepped back again. He hadn't read it. Or maybe he had read it and didn't see a re. Back then he had cash in his hand, and all he could see was that pickup truck. A cheer went up from the drill site. The foreman came running over, pulled off his gloves, his face covered in mud, but smiling wide. "Mr. H.A. Repair, we hit oil. Good pressure. Initial flow rate estimated at 400 barrels a day." I put down my water bottle. The workers were looking my way, some of them whistling. Kenny stood on the other side of the fence with his mouth hanging open, like something had lodged in his throat. At that night, I opened the cellar for the first time in YRS and pulled out my father's iron box. Inside were old documents, deeds, sales contracts, and my grandfather's ledger. The ledger recorded every purchase of land by my grandfather, How many sacks of wheat for the south slope? How many bushels of corn for a power cell on the east side? A horse and 12 sheep for the north 40. I flipped to the last page. My father had written in pencil, his handwriting crooked, on the margin of an old newspaper from Mithiba. The year he found out he had lung disease and knew he didn't have long. Land is the root. Oil is the life. As long as the root holds, the life stays. That he never saw the oil. I almost lost all of it. That I closed the ledger and put it back in the box. Outside, the lights on the drilling tower burned all night, like a bright needle stuck into the RKA. A month after the first well went into production, the county put together a little ceremony for me. They called it honoring a model landowner for local energy development. A few officials showed up, a reporter from the county paper, and a camera crew from the local TV station. They strung a red ribbon across the wellhead and handed me a pair of oversized scissors. I wore a clean plaid shirt and a new pair of boots. Emayratha had given them to me. Said my old pair had soles worn clear or through. When I cut the ribbon, the camera lights flashed, and somebody shoved a microphone in my face and asked me how I felt at that moment. That I looked into the microphone and said, my father waited his whole life for this and never saw it. But this land is not just about oil. It is about generations of soil, built shovelful by shovelful. The money came, but the roots cannot be forgotten. Somebody clapped. I looked past the crowd and saw Kenny huddled in the back, wearing an old jacket with stubble on his chin. He did not come closer, but he did not leave either. After the ceremony, I walked over to him. He looked down at my new boots. Dad, Jenny took the kids. She took the car too. I am living in that old trailer in town now, working odd jobs at the repair shop. What about Amy? Her husband ran off too. She moved back with the kids to the little cabin on the old land next to the south slope. She said she wants to come home and asked me to talk to you about it. I pulled a key out of my pocket. It was the key to the tool shed next to the old barn. I held it out to him. There is a cot in there, a little heater, water and power. You stay there for now. Save up your pay from the repair shop and figure out your next move. He looked at the key, but did not take it. Dad, you do not hate me. Would hating you bring back the south slope? He shook his head, then take it. I hate that truck, not you. But if you pull that stunt again, do not even think about the tool shed. You will not set foot on this property. He took the key and closed his fist around it. When he turned to walk away, his shoulders were slumped, the way I remembered old welders looking when they could not do the heavy work anymore. That night I sat in the kitchen writing checks. The first royalty payment had come in, and after taxes and legal fees, I had over $300,000 left. I wrote one to the town church to fix their leaking fellowship hall. I wrote another to the county agricultural extension office to fund a free seed program. The third one I wrote to Amy, so she could fix up that little cabin next to the south slope with heating and running water. For myself, I kept enough to tear down the old barn and build a new equipment shed in its place. No oil equipment inside, just tractors, planters, and harvesters. If my father were still around, he would have liked seeing those. The oil wells stayed on the north slope, a few hundred feet from the barn site, surrounded by fences and a ring of sunflowers. Emayratha said that was an environmental beautification measure. I thought sunflowers looked better than bed wired. That the county reporter came back with a photographer to take a picture of the oil landowner working his own field. I was turning soil with a shovel, and they snapped a few shots. The photo ran in the weekend edition with a headline that read black gold under yellow EARTH. I folded the newspaper and put it under the glass on my kitchen table, right next to the old map. The pencil mark on the south slope was still there, and I wrote a note next to it in ink. Lost. Remembered. The red line on the north slope I changed to green, and I drew a small circle where the barn used to stand with a note beside it that said new equipment shed. Pending. Before the first snow of December, the second and third wells went into production. Emayratha came back with her state data team for one final seismic scan, confirming that the entire anticline structure held 7% more reserves than the initial estimate. She said our array might get designated as PA-RT of a new oil development zone, and land prices around us had already tripled. People in town sta root calling me Oil Mister, and somebody even made up a little rhyme about it. I did not go out much. Most days I stayed in the kitchen, looking over reports, calling old Tom about tax questions, and walking over to the North Slope well site once in a while. The crew knew me by then. They would nod and hand me a cup of hot coffee. Kenny stayed in the tool shed for over a month. Then he saved up enough to rent a small APA mint in town and brought his daughter back. He did not buy another fancy truck. He got a used Ford pickup with tools in the back. Sometimes on weekends he came over to help me fix fences. He did not talk much, just worked and drank a glass of water before leaving. One day he stood on the porch looking at the drilling towers on the north slope and said, "Dad, how much oil do you think is down there? Enough to last me a few lifetimes. But when it is gone now. So what are you going to do?" I patted the old cushion on my mother's rocking chair and sat down, listening to it creak. "Leave it to your daughter. Not to spend, but to remember. There is something under this ground, but there is also something on top. No matter how archaic it gets underneath, you have to keep something growing up here." He did not ask any more questions. That day when he left, he stopped at the end of the driveway and looked at the old tire tracks from his red pickup. The tracks had been covered over by the new gravel I had put down. You could not see them anymore. A week before Christmas, the first full royalty payment hit my account. I signed about a dozen checks at the county bank, and my hand got tired. The bank manager gave me a gold pin as a souvenir. I put it in the drawer and kept using my $2 AR ballpoint. Old Tom called and said a documentary company wanted to tell my story. He said they thought it had drama, an old man holding on to poor land for years, a son selling it off, and then black gold bubbling up from underneath. I said, "I am not old. I am 62." Tom laughed on the other end of the line. "So do we let them film?" "No. Just tell them this. Land is meant to be grown on, not filmed on." I hung up the phone, put on my coat, and walked out to the north slope to check on the new pipeline installation. It was almost RK, the north wind was blowing, and snow pellets hit my face like fine sand. Most of the drilling crew had pulled out, leaving only a few men on watch. The instrument lights on the wellhead glowed green. I stood at the edge of the site and looked at the spot where the old BARN used to be. The new equipment shed was finished, red walls, and a metal roof, sturdier than my old house. Inside sat a new tractor that Kenny had driven over for me last weekend. He said it had enough horsepower to handle the hot RD ground on the north slope that the snow was falling harder. I turned and walked back, passing the row of sunflower stalks. The flowers were long gone, and the dry stems rattled in the wind. I would plant another batch in the spring. Ratha said sunflower roots helped restore the soil around the well sites and let the surface recover faster. That night I sat in the kitchen and took the gold pin out of the drawer. I looked at it for a moment and put it back. On the table lay a seed catalog for next season. I picked up my ballpoint and circled the corn seed page. The landline rang. It was Amy. She said the heating in the little cabin was working and the kids were building a snowman in the road. Her voice had a laugh in it, a sound I had not heard in years. "Dad, when are you coming over? I made apple pie. Day after tomorrow. Tomorrow I am meeting Ratha to look at the land reclassification application for the south slope. The county said there is a chance they can use eminent domain to reclaim it for agricultural use. Really. Not certain yet, but it is worth trying. She was quiet for 2 seconds. Then she said, "Dad, thank you. For what? The land is not mine alone." After I hung up, I lit the old oil lamp on the windowsill. I used to be stingy with it because kerosene cost money. Now I had electric lights in the kitchen, but I still liked the old lamp, the warm yellow glow it cast on my father's map, making the red and green lines gleam with tiny reflections, like the black liquid underground had seeped up into the paper. I turned off the electric light and sat by the oil lamp. I opened my grandfather's ledger and wrote today's date on a fresh page. Then I wrote a few words. Snow. Groundhar Road, plant sunflowers in spring. I closed the ledger and leaned back in my chair. The wind outside and the ticking of the old clock mixed together. Frost had formed on the window glass, blurring the lights from the north slope drilling towers into a soft haze of warm yellow. I closed my eyes. In my mind, I saw the red pickup, Kenny's face behind the fence, Ratha's back as she crouched in the BARN, and the pencil line my father had written on that old newspaper margin. Then I thought, I need to get up EARLY tomorrow and fill out the seed order form. Spring is not far away. Folks, if this story reminded you of a piece of land you know, a child who went down the wrong road, or a moment when you almost gave up, then we shall read something real. Edwin's story keeps going. Just like the seasons on this FARM, oil wells produce for a while, but land gets FARMed forever. If you like this kind of down-home satisfaction story, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Next time I will tell you about Old Tom the lawyer and the secret locked in his file cabinet, a deed older than the H.A. Ripper family itself. Subscribe so you do not miss it. See you in the next chapter.